The scent of burned cornbread filled Zelda Coleman's kitchen that morning in Newton, Kansas, and she knew she had failed her daughter again. It was September 1877, and the autumn harvest season meant her late husband Thomas should have been bringing in the wheat, but instead she stood alone watching smoke curl from her cast iron skillet while 8-year-old Lily coughed in the next room. The truth was simple and devastating. Without proper spices and seasonings, everything Zelda cooked tasted like ash and sorrow, a reflection of the emptiness that had consumed her life since Thomas died from a logging accident 14 months ago. She scraped the ruined bread into the waste bucket and wiped her hands on her apron, fighting back tears that seemed to come too easily these days. At 24 years old, she was too young to be a widow, too poor to maintain the small homestead on the edge of town, and too proud to accept the charity that the churchwomen offered with their pitying glances. What she needed was simple: cinnamon, salt, pepper, perhaps some sage and thyme. But the general store required cash money, and Zelda had none. The small vegetable garden behind the house provided enough to keep them from starving, but barely. Lily appeared in the doorway, her blonde braids messy from sleep, her thin face showing the effects of their meager diet. "Mama, is breakfast ready?" "Soon, sweetheart. Why don't you go feed the chickens while I prepare something else?" The girl nodded and skipped outside, her resilience both heartbreaking and inspiring. Zelda watched through the window as Lily scattered corn for their 3 remaining hens, talking to them as though they were her dearest friends. They had once owned a dozen chickens, 2 pigs, and a milk cow. Now they had the hens, nothing more. Everything else had been sold to pay debts. Zelda grabbed her shawl and decided to walk into town. Perhaps Mrs. Henderson at the general store would allow her to purchase on credit, though she had been refused twice before. The morning air carried the scent of prairie grass and distant cattle, reminding her that Newton was primarily a cattle town, where cowboys drove massive herds up from Texas to the railhead. During the season, the town swelled with rough men spending their wages on whiskey, gambling, and worse. Zelda typically avoided Main Street during those times, but desperation made people brave. The general store stood between the bank and the barber shop, its false front painted white with red lettering advertising goods from back east. Zelda stepped inside, her worn boots making little sound on the wooden floor. Mrs. Henderson stood behind the counter, sorting through a shipment of fabric bolts. She looked up with a neutral expression that made Zelda's heart sink. "Mrs. Coleman, what can I do for you today?" "I was hoping to purchase some spices, just the basics, salt, pepper, perhaps some cinnamon if you have it." Zelda kept her voice steady, refusing to show weakness. Mrs. Henderson sighed, setting down the fabric. "Zelda, you know I have sympathy for your situation. Losing Thomas like that, left with a child to raise alone, it's a terrible thing. But Mr. Henderson has been quite clear about extending credit. We cannot afford to carry debts that won't be repaid." "I will repay you. I just need time. I am planning to sell some quilts I have been making, and the church said there might be work helping with the harvest meals. Those are fine plans, but they don't help me today. I am sorry, truly I am." Mrs. Henderson's face showed genuine regret, but she did not waver. Zelda nodded stiffly and turned to leave, humiliation burning her cheeks. She nearly collided with a tall man entering the store, his broad shoulders blocking the doorway. She stepped back quickly, keeping her eyes down. "Pardon me, madam," the man said, his voice deep and warm with a slight Texas drawl. "Did not mean to startle you." She glanced up briefly and caught an impression of dark hair, sun-bronzed skin, and concerned brown eyes before she hurried past him into the street. Behind her, she heard Mrs. Henderson greeting the stranger with considerably more enthusiasm than she had shown Zelda. The walk home felt longer than usual. Zelda stopped at the church on the way, hoping to speak with Reverend Mitchell about the harvest meal work, but he was visiting a sick parishioner out of town. Nothing was working. Nothing ever worked anymore. Back at the house, Lily had gathered 4 eggs, a small miracle. Zelda prepared them carefully, stretching them with milk and serving them with the last of their bread. They ate in silence, Lily chattering about the chickens and their personalities, blissfully unaware of how precarious their situation had become. That afternoon, Zelda worked on a quilt in progress, her needle moving through the fabric with practiced precision. She had learned quilting from her mother back in Ohio, before she had married Thomas and moved to Kansas seeking opportunity and adventure. She had found both for a time. Thomas had been a good man, hardworking and kind, if not particularly romantic or passionate. Their marriage had been comfortable, pleasant, sufficient. His death had shattered that sufficiency and revealed how little foundation they had built. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Lily ran to answer it before Zelda could stop her, pulling open the door to reveal the tall man from the general store. He held a large burlap sack in his arms and removed his hat when he saw Zelda approaching. "Mrs. Coleman, my name is Owen Nash. I hope I am not intruding, but Mrs. Henderson mentioned you might be able to use some supplies." He hefted the sack slightly. "I just came up from Texas with a cattle drive and I am staying in Newton for a spell before heading back south. I bought more provisions than I need for my time here, and I would hate to see them go to waste." Zelda stared at him, stunned. In the better light, she could see he was perhaps 27 or 28, with an honest face and calloused hands that spoke of hard work. His clothes were worn but clean, his manner respectful but not obsequious. "I cannot accept charity from a stranger," she said automatically, though her heart cried out at the refusal. "It is not charity, madam. Truth is, I could use some proper home cooking. Been eating trail food for 3 months straight and I am powerful tired of beans and hardtack. Mrs. Henderson mentioned you might be willing to trade some cooking for supplies. I would be getting the better end of that deal, I assure you." Lily tugged at Zelda's skirt. "Mama, please. You said you needed spices to cook properly." Owen's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Your daughter makes a compelling argument. And I should mention that sack contains salt, pepper, cinnamon, sugar, flour, cornmeal, coffee, and a few other items. Also some dried beef and beans, which I know you do not need help preparing, but they might be useful." Zelda felt her resistance crumbling. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford, not with Lily going hungry. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Nash? I am staying at the boarding house in town, but Mrs. Pritchard's cooking is barely edible. If you would be willing to prepare supper for me, say 3 or 4 times a week, I would happily provide the supplies and ingredients. I will be in Newton for about 2 months, helping a friend with some ranch work outside of town. 2 months of regular supplies would be a blessing beyond measure." Zelda looked at the sack, then at Owen's open, honest face, then at Lily's hopeful expression. "Very well, Mr. Nash, but I insist on fair terms. You provide the ingredients, I will prepare proper meals. Nothing more." "Nothing more," he agreed, though something in his eyes suggested he was pleased by her acceptance. He set the sack inside the door and replaced his hat. "Would tomorrow evening be suitable for the first meal?" "Tomorrow evening would be fine. Come at 6 o'clock." After he left, Zelda opened the sack with trembling hands. Everything he had promised was there, along with unexpected luxuries: vanilla extract, nutmeg, dried apples, and a paper-wrapped package of peppermint sticks. Lily squealed with delight at the candy. and Zelda felt tears spring to her eyes again, but this time from gratitude rather than despair. That evening, she took inventory of her supplies and planned a menu for the following night. With proper ingredients, she could make something worthy of a man's wages. She would prepare pot roast with vegetables, biscuits with butter and honey, and an apple cake for dessert. The prospect of cooking a real meal filled her with an emotion she had not felt in months: anticipation. The next day passed in a flurry of preparation. Zelda cleaned the house thoroughly, brushed and rebraided Lily's hair, and changed into her better dress, a simple blue calico that Thomas had bought her 2 years ago. She told herself the effort was about maintaining dignity and showing respect for the arrangement, nothing to do with Owen Nash's kind eyes or the way her heart had fluttered when he smiled. She started cooking at 3 o'clock, wanting everything perfect. The pot roast simmered with carrots, potatoes, and onions from her garden. The biscuits rose beautifully in the oven. The apple cake filled the house with the scent of cinnamon and sugar, erasing the memory of burned cornbread. Owen arrived promptly at 6, freshly shaved and wearing a clean shirt. He carried a bouquet of wildflowers, which he presented to Lily with a small bow. "For the lady of the house," he said, making the girl giggle. Zelda felt her face warm as she took the flowers and placed them in a jar of water. "That was kind of you, Mr. Nash." "Owen, please." "Mr. Nash makes me feel like I am in trouble with my mother." They sat down to eat, Lily chattering away about her chickens and the grasshopper she had found in the garden. Owen listened with genuine interest, asking questions and responding with his own stories about life on the trail. He spoke of cattle stampedes and river crossings, of nights under endless stars and the particular challenges of convincing 2,000 head of stubborn longhorns to move in the right direction. "You like being a cowboy?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with fascination. "I do, most of the time. Though I confess I am getting a bit old for sleeping on the ground and eating dust. A man starts thinking about putting down roots eventually." Zelda served the pot roast and watched as Owen took his first bite, his eyes closed in apparent bliss. "Mrs. Coleman, this is possibly the finest meal I have had in my entire life, and I am not exaggerating for politeness. It is just pot roast," she said, but pleasure warmed her chest. "It is pot roast made by someone who cares about the result. There is a difference, believe me." They ate and talked, the conversation flowing more easily than Zelda had expected. Owen asked about her life with genuine interest, and she found herself telling him about growing up in Ohio, about meeting Thomas at a church social, about their decision to move west for land and opportunity. "Do you regret coming to Kansas?" he asked. She considered the question carefully. "I regret that Thomas died. I regret that Lily lost her father, but I do not regret the move itself. There is something about this land, the openness of it, the possibility. Even in difficult times, I feel more alive here than I ever did in Ohio." Owen nodded slowly. "I know what you mean. The West has a way of demanding everything from a person, but it gives something back too. Freedom, I suppose, the chance to become whoever you are meant to be." After dinner, Owen insisted on helping clear the table despite Zelda's protests. He moved comfortably in the kitchen, scraping plates and pumping water with the ease of someone accustomed to taking care of himself. When Zelda served the apple cake, his expression of delight made her laugh, a sound that surprised her with its rusty unfamiliarity. "I should probably leave before I eat this entire cake by myself," he said, finishing his second slice. "Thank you, Zelda. This was a true gift." She noticed he had used her first name and she had not corrected him. "Thank you for the supplies and for the arrangement. It helps more than you know. Then we are both benefiting, which makes it the best kind of arrangement." After he left, Lily helped her mother wash dishes, humming a tune she had heard Owen singing earlier. "I like Mr. Owen, Mama. He is nice. He does seem kind," Zelda admitted. "He looks at you the way Papa used to look at his favorite horse." Zelda laughed despite herself. "I am not sure that is a compliment, sweetheart." But later, lying in bed in the darkness, she thought about Owen's eyes across the table, the warmth in his voice, the easy way he had made her laugh. She had not thought about a man in that way since Thomas died. She had not thought she would ever want to. The realization was both frightening and strangely exhilarating. Over the next 2 weeks, Owen came for dinner 4 more times. Each visit followed a similar pattern. He would arrive with some small gift for Lily, flowers, or a pretty stone, sometimes a hair ribbon. They would share a meal while he told stories of his life and asked about theirs. He helped with dishes, played simple games with Lily, and always thanked Zelda with a sincerity that made her chest ache. But more than the routine, something was developing between them. Zelda found herself thinking about him during the day, planning meals she knew he would enjoy, changing her dress before he arrived. She caught him watching her sometimes, his expression unguarded and openly admiring. Their fingers brushed when passing plates, and the contact sent electricity through her arm. When he laughed at something she said, she felt more beautiful than she had in years. The problem was that Zelda was terrified. Falling for Owen meant risking her heart again, and she was not sure she was strong enough to survive another loss. It meant trusting that this feeling, this connection, was real and not just the product of her loneliness and his kindness. It meant imagining a future she had thought was closed to her. On his 6th visit, Owen arrived early, before Zelda had finished cooking. She was rolling out dough for pie crust, flour dusting her hands and apron when she heard his knock. Lily let him in, and he appeared in the kitchen doorway with an apologetic smile. "I am sorry. I know I am early. I was helping Joe with fence repair and we finished sooner than expected. Can I help with anything?" Zelda almost refused, but something in his eager expression changed her mind. "Can you peel apples? I have peeled approximately 1 million apples over campfires. I am an expert apple peeler." He rolled up his sleeves and set to work at the table while Zelda finished the crust. They worked in comfortable silence, the domestic intimacy of the moment not lost on either of them. Owen was indeed skilled with a paring knife, producing long spirals of peel with practiced efficiency. "Can I ask you something?" he said after a while. "Of course." "Do you ever think about getting married again?" Zelda's hand stilled on the rolling pin. She forced herself to continue working, keeping her voice casual. "I suppose I have not given it much thought. Lily and I are managing. But is managing enough?" She looked up at him then, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "What are you really asking, Owen?" He set down the knife and stood, moving closer to her. "I am asking if you feel what I feel, if these evenings mean as much to you as they do to me. If the thought of leaving Newton in 6 weeks makes you as miserable as it makes me." Her heart pounded so hard she was certain he could hear it. "Owen, I cannot. I am not ready." "Why not?" "Because I am frightened," she admitted, the words rushing out. "Because Thomas has only been gone 14 months and maybe I should wait longer. Because you are a cowboy who lives on the trail and I am a widow with a child and responsibilities. Because this could be nothing more than loneliness and proximity, and what happens when you leave. How do I survive losing someone again?" Owen reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her flour-dusted hands in his. "Zelda, I have been driving cattle for nearly 10 years. I have been from Texas to Montana and everywhere in between. I have met hundreds of women in dozens of towns, but I have never felt about any of them the way I feel about you. This is not proximity or loneliness. This is something real. But you are leaving. You said yourself you will be gone in 6 weeks. I do not have to leave. I came to Newton because my friend Joe bought a ranch here and needs help establishing it. He has asked me to partner with him, to settle down and build something permanent. I told him I needed time to think about it, but the truth is I have already decided. I want to stay, Zelda. I want to build a life here with you if you will let me. Tears spilled down her cheeks and Owen gently wiped them away with his thumbs. I am so scared, she whispered. I know, but I am patient. We can go as slow as you need. I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow, though I will not pretend I have not thought about it. I am just asking for a chance. Let me court you properly. Let me show you that this is real. Zelda looked into his eyes and saw nothing but honesty and hope. She thought about the past weeks, about how alive she had felt when he was near, about Lily's laughter and her own forgotten smiles. She thought about the difference between the comfortable affection she had shared with Thomas and this wild, terrifying, exhilarating thing growing between her and Owen. All right, she said softly. Court me, but slowly. His smile could have lit the entire prairie. He brought her hands to his lips and kissed her flour-covered knuckles. Slowly. I promise. From that evening forward, everything changed and nothing changed. Owen still came for dinner, but now he arrived earlier and stayed later. He helped with repairs around the house, fixing the sagging porch step and the loose shutter on the bedroom window. He brought Lily books from the general store and read to her before bed, his deep voice making the stories come alive. He sat with Zelda on the porch after Lily slept, talking about everything and nothing, gradually revealing the depths of his character. She learned that he had grown up in Missouri, the youngest of 5 brothers. His father had died when Owen was 12, and he had left home at 15 to make his own way, unwilling to be another mouth to feed. He had worked ranches, driven cattle, learned to be self-sufficient and strong. But beneath the typical cowboy exterior was a man who read poetry, who noticed the beauty in small things, who dreamed of building something that would last. I am tired of wandering, he told her one evening as they sat watching the sun set over the prairie. I want a home. I want a family. I want to wake up in the same bed every morning and know that I am building something that matters. What about the freedom you talked about, the openness of the West? I have had all the freedom I need. True freedom is not being unattached. It is choosing what you want to be attached to. He glanced at her, his expression serious. I choose you, Zelda. I know it is soon and I know you need time, but I want you to understand that I am certain. The certainty in his voice simultaneously comforted and frightened her. How could he be so sure when she was still so confused? But as the weeks passed, her confusion gradually resolved into clarity. She found herself looking forward to his visits with an intensity that had nothing to do with the supplies he brought. When he smiled at her, she felt beautiful and desired and alive. When he talked about the future, she began to imagine herself in it. The town noticed, of course. Newton was small enough that little escaped attention. Some of the church women clucked their tongues about the unseemly haste of the widow moving on. But others, particularly those who had known Thomas, understood that he would have wanted Zelda to find happiness again. Mrs. Henderson became positively warm toward her once it was clear Owen was serious about staying. Even the Reverend, upon his return, expressed cautious approval after meeting Owen and assessing his character. 6 weeks after Owen's first visit, he took Zelda for a buggy ride while Mrs. Henderson watched Lily. It was a beautiful October afternoon, the prairie grass golden in the autumn light, the air crisp with the promise of coming winter. They drove out to Joe's ranch, where Owen showed her the land and described his plans for the partnership. Joe will focus on the cattle operation, and I will manage the horse breeding. There is good money in quality horses, and I have always had a knack with them." He pointed to a rise overlooking a small creek. "That is where I want to build a house. A real house, with glass windows and a wooden floor. A house big enough for a family." Zelda's heart raced. "Owen, what are you saying?" He stopped the buggy and turned to face her, taking her hands in his. "I am saying that I love you, Zelda Coleman. I love your strength and your kindness. I love the way you care for Lily, and the way you laugh at my terrible jokes. I love your cooking, yes, but more than that, I love the way you put your whole heart into everything you do. I am saying that I want to marry you if you will have me. I want to be a husband to you and a father to Lily. I want to build that house on that hill and fill it with laughter and love and maybe more children if God wills it. I am saying that I am completely, irrevocably in love with you, and I will spend the rest of my life proving that you can trust me with your heart." The tears came again, but this time they were not from fear or grief. "I love you too," she whispered. "I do not know when it happened, but I love you so much it terrifies me. You do not have to be terrified. I am not going anywhere. I will be here tomorrow and next week and next year and for all the years after that." He kissed her then, gentle and reverent, as though she were something precious and breakable. Zelda kissed him back, pouring all her hope and fear and love into the connection. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "Is that a yes?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." His whoop of joy startled a flock of birds from a nearby tree. He pulled her close, holding her as though he would never let go, and she let herself sink into the safety of his embrace. For the first time since Thomas died, she felt truly at peace. They were married 6 weeks later in early December 1877 in the small church in Newton. Lily served as flower girl, beaming with joy as she scattered rose petals down the aisle. Joe stood as Owen's best man, and Mrs. Henderson, won over completely by Owen's devotion, stood with Zelda. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, and when the reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed his bride with such tenderness that several ladies in the congregation dabbed at their eyes. The reception was held in the church hall, with half the town in attendance. People brought food and well wishes, and someone produced a fiddle for dancing. Owen swirled Zelda around the floor, both of them laughing like children while Lily clapped along with the music. "Are you happy?" Owen asked as they danced. "Happier than I thought possible," Zelda admitted. "Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for taking a chance on a wandering cowboy. You have given me everything I ever wanted." They moved into the boarding house temporarily while Owen and Joe worked on building the house on the hill. Owen spent every spare moment on construction, and Zelda often joined him, helping where she could and bringing lunch for the workers. Lily played nearby, chattering to anyone who would listen about her new papa and their new house. The house took shape slowly through the winter months. It was not large, but it was solid and well built, with real glass windows and a stone fireplace. Owen designed the kitchen to Zelda's specifications, with plenty of counter space and a new cast iron stove that made her weep with joy. There were 2 bedrooms and a loft where Lily would sleep, and a front porch with a swing where they could sit on summer evenings. They moved in on a cold day in March 1878. Owen carried Zelda over the threshold while Lily danced around them excitedly. That first evening, they cooked dinner together in the new kitchen, working side by side with the easy comfort of people who belong together. Owen told Lily stories by the fire while Zelda washed dishes, listening to their laughter and feeling such overwhelming gratitude that she had to pause and steady herself against the counter. Owen found her there a moment later. "Are you all right? I am perfect. I am just thinking about how much has changed in 6 months, how different my life is now. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her head. Better or worse? Immeasurably better. You saved me, Owen, not just from poverty but from the grayness that was consuming me. You gave me back my life. You saved me too, you know. I was just wandering, existing but not really living. You gave me purpose. You gave me home. That night, after Lily was asleep in her loft, Owen and Zelda lay together in their new bed, wrapped in each other's arms. Outside, the wind howled across the prairie, but inside they were warm and safe and together. The months that followed were filled with hard work and simple joys. The ranch prospered under Owen and Joe's management. The horse breeding program exceeded expectations, and buyers came from as far as Dodge City to purchase their stock. Zelda planted a garden larger than any she had managed before, and the house was soon filled with the scents of fresh bread and fruit pies and simmering stews, all perfectly seasoned with the spices Owen kept constantly in stock. She also began taking on some sewing work for ladies in town, her skill with needle and thread becoming well known. The extra income was not necessary, but it gave her independence and satisfaction. Owen encouraged her ambitions, proud of her talent and work ethic. Lily thrived in the new environment, growing strong and healthy with regular meals and the security of a loving family. Owen was patient and kind as a stepfather, never trying to replace Thomas, but carving out his own place in the girl's heart. He taught her to ride, started educating her in reading and arithmetic, and listened with genuine interest to her endless observations about the world. In the summer of 1878, Zelda discovered she was pregnant. She told Owen one evening on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. "I am going to have a baby," she said simply. Owen went very still beside her. Then he turned and cupped her face in his hands, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Truly, truly." "In late winter, I think." He kissed her then, deep and passionate and full of promise. "You have made me the happiest man in Kansas, in the whole damn country." "Language," she said, but she was laughing. The pregnancy was not easy. Zelda suffered from nausea well into the 4th month, and Owen hovered anxiously, trying to help in any way he could. He took over more of the cooking, following her instructions carefully and teasing her about role reversal. His food was never quite as good as hers, but it was edible, and Zelda appreciated the effort. As her belly swelled with new life, Zelda felt herself healing in ways she had not known she needed. The grief for Thomas would always be part of her, but it no longer consumed her. She had given herself permission to love again, to hope again, to believe in happiness that might last. Their son was born on a frigid night in February 1879, after a labor that lasted nearly 20 hours. Owen stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and wiping her forehead and telling her how strong she was, how brave, how much he loved her. When the baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Owen cried openly. "He is beautiful," he said, cradling the tiny bundle with surprising gentleness for such a large man. "He is absolutely perfect." They named him Thomas, after Zelda's first husband, a gesture that touched her deeply. Owen had suggested it, saying that he had no insecurity about honoring the man who had been part of making Zelda who she was. "Thomas was your past, and he deserves to be remembered," Owen said. "But I am your future, and I am secure enough in that to honor what came before." Lily was enchanted with her baby brother, helping care for him with the seriousness of someone much older. She sang to him and brought him her favorite treasures to look at and explained the world to him in her childish wisdom. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. By 1880, they had expanded the horse operation and built a larger barn. They hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work, and Joe had married a woman from Wichita who became Zelda's close friend. Life settled into a rhythm of work and family, of seasons changing and children growing, of love deepening with each passing year. In the spring of 1881, Zelda gave birth to twin daughters, to everyone's surprise and delight. The births were easier than Thomas's had been, and the babies were healthy and strong. They named them Sarah and Emma, and Owen walked around for weeks in a daze of exhausted happiness, trying to figure out how to hold 2 babies at once while still helping with the older children. The house that had seemed so spacious now felt crowded, so Owen began planning an addition. He and Joe and the ranch hands worked through the summer, adding 2 more bedrooms and expanding the kitchen. Zelda directed the kitchen expansion with the authority of someone who knew exactly what she needed, and the result was a space that became the true heart of the home. It was in that kitchen, surrounded by children and the sense of baking bread and roasting meat, that Zelda often reflected on how far she had come. She would look at Owen, helping Lily with her schoolwork at the table while baby Thomas played at his feet and the twins napped in their cradle, and she would feel such fierce love that it almost hurt. One evening in late 1881, after the children were all asleep, Owen found Zelda standing at the kitchen window, looking out at the prairie darkness. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sliding his arms around her waist. "About spices," she said. He laughed softly. "Spices." "The day we met, I was so desperate for spices. I thought my life had been reduced to that basic need, just trying to make food palatable enough to survive. I could not see past the next meal the next day. And now I have more than I ever dreamed possible. Not just spices, though I appreciate that I never have to worry about running out, but joy and purpose and love, a family, a future, all because a kind cowboy decided to help a struggling widow." Owen turned her to face him, his expression serious. "I helped you because the moment I saw you in that store, looking so proud and frightened and determined, I felt something shift in my chest. I told myself I was just being charitable, but the truth was I wanted any excuse to see you again, to be near you. You changed my life as much as I changed yours. Do you ever regret staying, giving up the trail life? Not for 1 second. Everything I want is right here in this house, in this life we have built together." He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then her lips. "You are my home, Zelda. You and these children and this ranch. This is everything." The years continued to pass in a blur of growth and change. Lily grew into a beautiful and capable young woman, eventually marrying a schoolteacher from Wichita when she turned 20. Thomas Jr. proved to have his father's way with horses and his mother's quick mind. The twins were identical in appearance but opposite in temperament, one quiet and thoughtful, the other wild and adventurous. In 1885, Zelda gave birth to their final child, another son they named John. By then, she was 32 and Owen was 35, both of them feeling the years of hard work in their bones but grateful for the life those years had built. The ranch became one of the most successful operations in Harvey County. Owen's horses were known for their quality and temperament, and buyers came from across Kansas and beyond to purchase breeding stock. Joe's cattle operation complemented the horse business perfectly, and the 2 families became so intertwined that the ranch was known as Nash and Monroe, a partnership in every sense of the word. Newton itself grew and changed as the wild cattle days faded, and the town became more settled and civilized. The rough cowboys and dangerous saloons gave way to families and schools and churches. Zelda became known not just as Owen's wife, but as a skilled businesswoman in her own right. managing the ranch's books and expanding into supplying baked goods to the hotel and restaurant in town. Through it all, the kitchen remained the heart of their home and their relationship. Owen never lost his appreciation for Zelda's cooking, and she never forgot that it was his gift of spices that had brought them together. On their anniversary each year, he would present her with a new spice or seasoning, something exotic and rare that she had never tried before. And she would use it to create something special, a dish that captured the flavor of their love and life together. On their 10th anniversary in December 1887, Owen surprised Zelda with something different. Instead of spices, he presented her with a leather-bound book, its pages blank. "What is this?" she asked, running her hand over the smooth leather. "A recipe book. I thought you could write down all your recipes, the ones you have created over the years. Pass them down to our children and their children. Leave a legacy beyond just the ranch." Zelda felt tears prick her eyes. "That is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me." She began filling the book that very evening, writing not just recipes but the stories behind them. The pot roast she had made that first night, when Owen had declared it the finest meal of his life. The apple cake that had become his favorite. The herb-crusted chicken she had created when experimenting with the oregano he had brought back from a trip to Dodge City. The cinnamon rolls she made every Christmas morning, filling the house with sweetness and warmth. As she wrote, she realized she was creating more than a cookbook. She was documenting a love story, one measured in meals and flavors and the everyday magic of feeding the people you love. Each recipe represented a moment, a memory, a thread in the tapestry of their shared life. The children grew and thrived. Lily had 3 children of her own and often brought them to visit the ranch. Thomas Jr. took over much of the horse operation as Owen's back began to protest the physical demands of ranch work. The twins both showed interest in different aspects of the business. Sarah in the breeding records and bloodlines, Emma in the actual training and handling of the horses. John, the youngest, was still finding his way, but he showed promise in everything he tried. In 1890, as Zelda approached her 37th birthday, she and Owen took a rare trip alone, leaving the children with Joe's family for a week. They traveled to Wichita, stayed in a hotel, ate in restaurants, and wandered the streets like courting youngsters. One evening, sitting in their hotel room after a fine dinner, Owen pulled out a small box. "Another gift?" Zelda asked, surprised. "Just a little something I saw that made me think of you." Inside the box was a delicate gold locket. Owen opened it to show her the interior, where he had placed tiny photographs of their 5 children on one side and a picture of the 2 of them on the other. "So you can carry us all with you, always," he said softly. Zelda could not speak past the lump in her throat. She turned so he could fasten the locket around her neck, then turned back and kissed him with all the passion and love of their years together. "I love you," she whispered. "I will love you until my last breath and beyond. I love you too. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Zelda. The very best thing." That night, they made love with the tender intensity of people who had loved deeply and well for many years, who knew each other's bodies and hearts completely. And afterward, lying in each other's arms in the unfamiliar hotel bed, Zelda thought about the journey that had brought them here. She had been a desperate widow, unable to afford the basic spices needed for cooking, believing her life was over at 24. He had been a wandering cowboy, tired of the trail but unsure what came next. Together, they had built something extraordinary. A family, a ranch, a legacy of love that would continue long after they were gone. The spices he had brought that first day had been so much more than salt and pepper and cinnamon. They had been hope and possibility and the promise of better things. He had seasoned her cooking with those spices, yes, but more importantly, he had seasoned her life with his love, transforming the bland existence of mere survival into something rich and flavorful and deeply satisfying. Back at the ranch, life continued its steady rhythm. The children grew older, began their own families, brought new life and energy to the land Owen and Zelda had tamed together. The house was expanded again to accommodate visiting grandchildren, until it sprawled across the hilltop like a testament to growth and abundance. Zelda continued cooking, though now she often had help from daughters and daughters-in-law eager to learn her techniques and secrets. She would stand at the big stove in the expanded kitchen, showing a young woman how to properly season a roast or knead bread dough. And she would think about that day in the general store when she could not afford a single pinch of salt. Owen's hair turned gray, and lines deepened around his eyes and mouth. But to Zelda, he was as handsome as the day he had stood in her doorway with a sack of supplies and an offer that changed her life. He moved a bit slower now, leaving more of the physical ranch work to his sons and the hired hands, but his mind remained sharp, and his love for his family never wavered. On quiet evenings, they still sat on the porch swing, watching the sun set over the prairie, talking about their day and their plans and their memories. Sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, fingers intertwined, needing no words to express what they felt. In the summer of 1895, the town of Newton organized a celebration for its 25th anniversary. Owen and Zelda attended, two of the community's most respected citizens. They walked down Main Street, past the general store where they had first met, and Zelda squeezed Owen's hand. "Should we go in? Say hello to Mrs. Henderson? I think we should." The store had changed over the years, expanded and modernized, but Mrs. Henderson still worked behind the counter, now aided by her grown children. She looked up when they entered and broke into a wide smile. "Owen, Zelda. How wonderful to see you both." They chatted for a while, catching up on news and gossip. As they were leaving, Mrs. Henderson called after them. "You know, I have always felt a bit responsible for your happiness. If I had extended that credit all those years ago, you might never have met." Owen laughed. "Then I am eternally grateful for your fiscal responsibility, Mrs. Henderson." Walking back to their buggy, Zelda reflected on the truth of that statement. If she had gotten the spices she needed that day, she never would have been desperate enough to accept Owen's offer. They might have passed each other on the street as strangers, never knowing what they could have been to each other. "Fate," she said aloud. "What about it?" Owen asked. "I was just thinking that maybe some things are meant to be. Maybe the universe conspired to bring us together, even through difficulty and hardship. I do not know about the universe, but I know I would have found you somehow. You were meant to be mine, Zelda. I believe that with everything I am." Years continued to pass, marked by births and deaths, celebrations and sorrows, the inevitable cycle of life on the prairie. Owen's partner Joe died in 1898, and Zelda held Owen as he grieved for his friend and business partner. They supported Joe's widow and children, folding them even more deeply into their extended family. Zelda's eldest daughter from Owen, Sarah, married a banker's son and moved to Topeka, but she visited often, bringing her children to run wild on the ranch that had been her childhood home. Emma married a fellow horse trainer and stayed on the ranch, working alongside Thomas Jr. to continue the business their father had built. John, the youngest, surprised everyone by announcing his intention to become a doctor. He left for medical school in Kansas City in 1900, and while Zelda missed him terribly, she was fiercely proud of his ambition and intelligence. In 1902, on a warm spring afternoon, Zelda was working in her garden when she suddenly felt faint. She sat down heavily on the ground, her vision swimming. Owen found her there a few minutes later and carried her into the house, his face tight with worry. The doctor from Newton diagnosed her with exhaustion and stress, prescribing rest and relaxation. Zelda followed his orders reluctantly, unused to inactivity. But the incident frightened them both, a reminder that they were no longer young and that time was precious. Owen became even more attentive after that, insisting that Zelda slow down and let others handle more of the work. He hired a woman from town to come help with the heavy kitchen tasks, though Zelda still supervised all the cooking and insisted on preparing Owen's favorite meals herself. "I am not an invalid," she protested one day when Owen tried to prevent her from kneading bread dough. "I know you are not. But we have been given a gift, Zelda. Years and years together when many people never get even 1 year. I want to make sure we have as many more years as possible. So please, let me take care of you the way you have taken care of all of us for so long." She could not argue with that. She let him fuss over her, bringing her tea and tucking blankets around her shoulders and reading to her in the evenings. And she realized that this too was love, this tender care in the face of mortality, this determination to cherish every remaining moment. The new century brought changes to Kansas and to Newton. Automobiles began appearing on the streets, and electricity came to the ranch in 1905, transforming their evenings with the miracle of electric lights. The children marveled at the modern conveniences, but Owen and Zelda sometimes missed the simplicity of their early years together, when life moved at the pace of horses and seasons. Their 50th wedding anniversary fell in December 1907. The family organized a massive celebration, bringing together children and great-grandchildren from across Kansas. The house overflowed with people and noise and laughter, 3 generations of the family Owen and Zelda had created. At the dinner, Thomas Jr. stood to make a toast. "To my parents, who have shown all of us what real love looks like, who have built not just a successful ranch but a family bound by respect and affection, who have taught us that the greatest wealth is not measured in dollars but in relationships and memories. We love you both, and we are grateful every day for the example you have set." Zelda wept openly, overwhelmed by the love surrounding her. Owen held her hand tightly, his own eyes suspiciously bright. When the toasting was done and the celebration wound down, when the guests had finally departed and quiet returned to the house, they sat together on their bed, exhausted but happy. 50 years, Zelda said wonderingly. "How did we get to be so old?" Carefully, Owen replied with a smile. "One day at a time with you by my side. Do you remember that first dinner? When you came with that sack of supplies and I was so terrified of what it might mean? I remember everything. The way you looked, flour on your hands, trying so hard to be strong. The way Lily peeked around your skirts. The taste of that pot roast, the first real meal I had eaten in months. The moment I knew I wanted to spend my life with you. When was that moment, when you laughed? I said something, I do not even remember what, and you laughed. The sound of it hit me like a lightning strike. I thought, I want to make her laugh like that every day for the rest of my life, and I have tried my best to do exactly that. You have succeeded. Oh, Owen, you have given me such a wonderful life." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, a kiss that held 50 years of shared experiences and unwavering devotion. "The life we built together. Never forget that this was always a partnership." They fell asleep that night wrapped in each other's arms, just as they had every night for 50 years. 2 people who had found in each other the missing piece that made them whole. The years after their anniversary were gentle ones. Owen fully retired from active ranch work, leaving the business in the capable hands of Thomas Jr. and Emma. He spent his days reading, tending a small woodworking shop he had set up, and most importantly, spending time with Zelda. They took walks when the weather permitted, received visits from the endless parade of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and enjoyed the peace of a life well lived. Zelda's health remained fragile but stable. She could no longer handle the heavy physical work she had once done with ease, but her mind remained sharp and her spirit undimmed. She continued to supervise the kitchen, to write in her recipe book, to share her knowledge and experience with younger generations eager to learn. In the spring of 1910, Owen took ill with pneumonia. Despite John's best efforts, now a successful doctor practicing in Newton, the illness progressed rapidly. For 3 weeks, Owen fought, and Zelda never left his side, holding his hand and talking to him even when he could not respond. On a warm May morning, with the windows open to let in the prairie breeze and birdsong, Owen opened his eyes and looked at Zelda with perfect clarity. "My beautiful Zelda," he whispered, "what a life we have had." "The best life," she agreed, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for loving me. Easiest thing I ever did." He smiled, that familiar warm smile that had won her heart so many years ago. "I will wait for you. However long it takes, I will be waiting. I know you will. I will come find you as soon as I can." He closed his eyes then, still smiling, and slipped away peacefully with her hand in his and their children gathered around them. Zelda felt the moment his spirit left, felt the severing of the connection that had bound them for 33 years, and the pain of it was almost unbearable. But even through her grief, she felt gratitude. They had been given so much time, so many years of love and laughter and partnership. They had built something that would endure long after both of them were gone. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that their love was strong enough to transcend even death. Owen was buried on the ranch, on the hill where they had built their house, overlooking the land he had loved and the home they had created. The entire town of Newton attended the funeral, testimony to the respect and affection he had earned over his years in the community. After the funeral, Zelda found she could not bear to stay in the house without him. The emptiness was too acute, the silence too loud. Thomas Jr. suggested she come stay with him and his family, and she agreed, moving into their home and trying to find a new rhythm for her remaining days. But she declined quickly without Owen. She had no illness, no specific ailment. She simply seemed to fade, as though her body knew its purpose was complete. John examined her frequently, but could find nothing medically wrong. She was simply done, ready to join her beloved husband. On a quiet morning in late July, just 2 months after Owen's death, Zelda called her children to her bedside. They gathered around her, all 5 of them, holding her hands and trying not to cry. "I have had a wonderful life," she told them. "Better than I ever dreamed possible. You have all made me so proud, given me such joy. Never forget how much I love you." "Mama, do not leave us," Sarah whispered. "I must, darling. Your father is waiting, and I have been without him for too long." She smiled, her eyes distant, as though she could see something they could not. "He is here, actually. He has come to take me home." She closed her eyes then, still smiling, and breathed her last surrounded by the children she had raised and loved. In her hand, she clutched the locket Owen had given her all those years ago in Wichita, holding close the images of her family even as she prepared to leave them. They buried Zelda beside Owen on the hill, 2 matching headstones marking the resting place of 2 people who had loved deeply and well. The inscription on Zelda's stone read, "Beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, she seasoned life with love." In the years that followed, the ranch continued to thrive under the management of their children and grandchildren. The house on the hill became something of a family museum, preserved as it had been in Owen and Zelda's time, a reminder of the foundation on which everything else had been built. Zelda's recipe book became a family treasure, passed from generation to generation, with new recipes and stories added by each descendant. But the original recipes, written in Zelda's careful hand, were treated with particular reverence, tangible links to the woman who had taught them all about the power of feeding people with love and care. Thomas Jr.'s daughter became a cookbook author, publishing many of her great-grandmother's recipes along with the stories behind them. The book became a regional bestseller, and people from across Kansas wrote to say how the recipes and stories had touched them, had made them think about the love that goes into every meal prepared for family. On the 100th anniversary of Owen and Zelda's meeting, in September 1977, the family organized a massive reunion at the ranch. Nearly 200 descendants gathered, spanning 5 generations, all of them owing their existence to a chance encounter between a desperate widow and a kind cowboy who had brought her spices when she needed them most. The oldest attendee was Thomas Jr., now 98 years old but still mentally sharp. He stood before the assembled family and told them the story as he remembered it, how his mother had been at her lowest point when Owen appeared like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to pray. "They taught us that love is not just a feeling but a choice, made new every single day," he said. "They chose each other, over and over through good times and bad. They built this ranch, yes, but more importantly, they built a family founded on respect and affection and unwavering commitment. We are all here because of their love, and we honor them best by carrying forward the values they embodied." The family toasted Owen and Zelda's memory, raising glasses in honor of 2 people who had transformed simple ingredients, spices, into something miraculous. A love that transcended time and death, nourishing not just bodies but souls, not just one generation but many. And somewhere, in whatever place souls go when they leave this world, Owen and Zelda smiled, still together, still in love, their bond unbroken by something as trivial as mortality. They had built something that would last, not just in property or business, but in the hearts and lives of everyone they touched. The widow had needed spices for cooking. The cowboy had seasoned her cooking and her life with his love. And in doing so, they had created a legacy that would endure for generations, a testament to the transformative power of love freely given and gratefully received. Their story became legend in Newton, told and retold, embellished and romanticized, but always containing at its core a simple truth: that love can find us in our darkest moments, that kindness can change the trajectory of a life, that 2 broken people can come together and create something whole and beautiful and lasting. The ranch still operates today, now in the hands of the 6th generation of Owen and Zelda's descendants. The original house on the hill was carefully restored and opened as a historical site, allowing visitors to walk through the rooms where Owen and Zelda lived and loved, to stand in the kitchen where Zelda created her famous meals, to sit on the porch swing where they spent so many evenings watching the sun set over the prairie. In the kitchen, pride of place is given to a display of antique spice jars, the very ones Owen brought to Zelda that first day. They are empty now, their contents long since used up, but they represent so much more than simple seasonings. They represent hope and generosity, connection and transformation. They represent a love story that began with a simple gift and grew into something magnificent. Visitors to the house often comment on the warmth they feel there, as though the love that filled those rooms for so many years has somehow seeped into the walls and floors, creating an atmosphere of peace and contentment. Many leave feeling inspired, thinking about the people they love and the ways they can season their own lives with kindness and care. The story of Owen and Zelda reminds us that we never know when our lives might change completely. A chance meeting, an act of kindness, a decision to take a risk on love, any of these things can alter our path in ways we cannot imagine. It reminds us that it is never too late for happiness, that grief and loss do not have to be permanent states, that opening our hearts again after heartbreak is not a betrayal but a triumph. Most importantly, it reminds us that love is both simple and complex, both everyday and miraculous. It is found in grand gestures and quiet moments, in words spoken and actions taken, in meals prepared and hands held and promises kept. It is the most basic and the most profound thing we humans do, this reaching out to another person and saying, "You matter to me. You are worth my time and effort and devotion." The widow needed spices for cooking. The cowboy seasoned her cooking with his love, and in doing so, they created something that nourished not just their bodies but their souls, not just their lifetime but all the lifetimes that came after. Their love became the foundation on which generations built their lives, and their story became a beacon showing the way toward hope and healing and happily ever after. And so we leave them there, on that hill overlooking the Kansas prairie, together forever in the house they built and the land they loved. Two ordinary people who created an extraordinary legacy simply by loving each other well. Their story is ended, but its echoes continue, rippling out through time, touching hearts and changing lives, a testament to the enduring power of love to transform everything it touches. The end.